Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. Dayton Moore certainly is one of the most impactful people in the history of Kansas City sports, arriving as the general manager of the Kansas City Royals in 2006 and changing the outlook of the owner, the franchise, and the fans, and eventually, of course, winning 2 American League pennants and a World Series. Now he has the task of trying to rebuild the Royals again after a couple of difficult seasons. But you know all that. And on Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing, one of the things that we really try to do is get into a lot of the things that you don't know about a person. Dayton Moore was born in Wichita and raised in the Midwest. He was a Royals fan right from the start. He went and played college baseball on the East Coast and then started a career in scouting and thought that that was what he was going to do for his entire baseball career. But eventually he came around to deciding to head up a franchise, and that was the long moribund Kansas City Royals. He is a man of strong faith and very active in the community. It's time to tell the story of Dayton Moore through his own words, and I will be pleased to bring you that coming up next. A brilliant and engaging conversation with Dayton Moore straight ahead on Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing. We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
Hi, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery. Thank you, Kansas City, for supporting all the local restaurants during this time of crisis. Starting Monday, June 1st, the 23rd Street Brewery will be open our regular hours from 11 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. every day of the week. For dine-in and patio service, if you can believe that, we're open. During this phase, we will adhere to the Douglas County recommendations for restaurants, and please see our website or our Facebook page for details. Most importantly, we want all of our guests and staff to stay safe, and together, we will all get through this.
My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I have been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday, and make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Dayton, you were born in Wichita, but you weren't raised there. How long were you in Kansas before you moved into your teenage years in Moline, Illinois?
Well, Danny, great to be on with you. Great to share some time and perspective, and I don't enjoy talking about me, truthfully. You kind of ambushed me a little bit,
yes.
You and Mike Swanson. If I knew this was about me, I'm not sure I would have. But for you, I'd get on this thing and talk about what you want to talk about. So again, I appreciate you having us on, but. You know, all my family was raised in Kansas. My mother grew up in a little town called Coldwater, Kansas, which is in Comanche County. It's roughly 170 miles west of Wichita. And make a long story short, my father and her met through some mutual friends while my mother was attending a business college in Wichita, and my father was actually in the service at the time and was back home on leave, and so they met, and my brother and sister and I were all born in Wichita. When my father got out of the service, he took a job with Beechcraft, which is in Wichita. Yep. And then he was in the aviation business. And as he attempted to better our lives, we bounced around a little bit. It was all good. But we always would spend 2 to 3 weeks every summer in that small farming community in south central Kansas, Coldwater. And, we'd spend time with my grandparents and do what young kids do, swim at the local pool. And, I'd spend time out the farm with my grandfather as he went through his daily activities, but it was very enjoyable, and that's where our love affair with the Royals came about, because my grandmother was a big baseball fan. She loved the Kansas City Royals, and of course I was introduced to baseball at a young age, and loved the Royals, followed the Royals, but it was always easier to pay attention to them during that part of the summer when we were back in Kansas.
When did you start playing baseball, and when did you feel like you developed some aptitude for it?
Well, I grew up loving the game, obviously, and I think probably like most of us, Danny. My father started playing catch, with your father in the backyard when you're 3 and 4 years old, and of course, the kids in your neighborhood would join in, and so that was a love affair that began as a child. And, I started playing t-ball, I remember when I was 5, and then just progressed, from there. And so, we played all the sports, as you know. We played all that was in season, but baseball was the one that was the most enjoyable, and for whatever reason captured, my heart and my mind.
I think most people know this, but what position did you play or gravitate to?
I was a middle infielder. I grew up playing shortstop, and then I actually, when I graduated from high school, I wanted to sign professionally, and I went to a few camps, and there was a scout by the name of Larry Smith with the Cincinnati Reds that wanted to send me to junior college. I had originally committed to the University of Missouri at Columbia to play for Gene McCarter. And I decided that a junior college was probably the best route for me. I wasn't a great student coming out of high school, and I just wanted to play baseball. And, of course, junior colleges at the time played 100-plus games a year. And so he sent me to Garden City Community College out in Garden City, Kansas, to play for Joe Slobko, who was an amazing coach and an amazing teacher and an incredible competitor. And I played there for Joe for 2 years, and then went to George Mason University. Was a middle infielder, as I mentioned, and finished up at George Mason and signed with an independent pro team, and I was released out of there. And then Billy Brown, who's the head coach at George Mason, asked me to come coach with him, which is a seed that I had planted when he was actually recruiting me out of Garden City. I told him that someday I wanted to coach, and I would appreciate any, future consideration, for that opportunity if he felt I was worthy. And so he offered me a position to coach. It's a volunteer position, but we were able to get some opportunity and some favor going forward, and it later became a full-time position before I joined the Braves as an area scouting supervisor in 1994.
What was it like for you to set aside the playing aspect of your baseball life?
I was able to turn it off pretty quickly because, even when I was a player, I would manage the game along with the head coach, whether it be pitching changes or matchups or in-game strategy. I jumped into it right away. So when I was done playing, I jumped into it right away. In fact, when I joined Billy Brown's staff at George Mason University, I immediately started looking for opportunities in the summer leagues. I became an assistant for the Winchester Royals, and because I felt like I needed to be coaching at least 100-plus games a year. So that was very important to me. And as you know, Danny, I mean, once you, as a coach, it becomes so consuming, and you're involved in all the little details of every player's progression, development plan, and you don't really have time to miss the plane. I mean, of course, you get out there and you'll take ground balls and maybe take some BP with the players. And I still take ground balls, not here at the big league stadium, but we're at the Urban Youth Academy and we're working with kids. I'm constantly taking ground balls and playing catch and throwing batting practice. I mean, I love to throw BP, and I took pride in being able to throw BP every single day when I was a coach. So it's something that I want to do. I mean, it's still it's something that I see myself getting back into at some point in time, getting back on the field as a coach. That's what I wanted to do. In fact, when I was offered a scouting job with the Braves, it was the third scouting job I'd been offered. Previously, one with the Twins and one with the Seattle Mariners, and I turned them down because I just wanted to be a college coach, and I was just really, really focused on that goal. And even when the Braves called me originally, I told them that I wasn't interested in being a scout. I wanted to coach, and they were persistent, and so I decided to take the scouting job, and I was going to do it just for 4 years and get right back into college coaching. But I wanted to take it as an opportunity to learn as much as I could about the pro game, because I didn't have extensive background in professional baseball. And so I wanted to learn all about it and then get back into college coaching. And so, but that's something I still desire to do. I've had a chance to coach at the amateur level a little bit over the last 5 or 6 years. Currently I'm not, but that's why the Urban Youth Academy was a huge dream of ours and something that we wanted to see come to fruition, so it could be a platform for us to continue to grow the game in Kansas City. But I could see myself, coaching one of those teams, one of those travel teams that goes around the country at a level that we can really kind of finish kids off and prepare them for college baseball or professional baseball. And I think it's much needed, truthfully, and it's really where my heart is. And as each day goes by, I gravitate more and more in that direction, truthfully.
Yeah, I'm curious. You mentioned that you weren't a particularly good student, but you ended up getting a master's degree, and obviously you're a very intelligent guy. Was it just baseball overwhelmed you, or what was it that made you an indifferent student?
Well, Danny, education, and I had a wonderful mother and father. My father actually died young. He got sick at 48, and he died of cancer at 49. My mother died at 67. In fact, when my father died, my mother had to take 2 jobs. She worked 40 hours a week at a cable company,
right,
and then 4 days a week at Kmart, 3 nights and on Saturdays. Education just simply was not stressed a whole lot in our family. I wasn't a particularly good reader. And then when I went to a junior college, a teacher by the name of Kathy Isaac kind of, for whatever reason, took me under her wing a little bit, taught me how to study. I became interested in learning, and I actually began to get really good grades. And I think all throughout college, I either had a 3.0 or a 3.5 the rest of the way, even through graduate school. But I had to work really hard at it. But I enjoyed learning, but it just in high school, I think my GPA was 2.2, and I just didn't apply myself very well. And of course, baseball, was my passion. It's something that I wanted to make a career of. I knew from the time I was a young boy, and even in high school, and they start talking about career opportunities, which we've all been through. I wanted to be a baseball coach. If I wanted to play as long as I could, and then I wanted to coach. And so it's always, I was always something that, I've tried to work really hard to learn the game.
But your career would take its path towards being a scout, and Atlanta really obviously was an organization that really devoted themselves to scouting, and maybe were, they wanted to, obviously every organization has eventually gone into the analytics side of it, but maybe they treasured that scouting aspect the most. As somebody who wanted to coach, what was it like being a scout?
it was a great learning experience because I learned to evaluate players with a particular process, okay, and kind of to trust that process a little bit. So when, as a scout, as you know, you grade out running speed, you grade out fielding, you grade out throwing ability, you grade out hitting, and you grade out power production, okay? And so you put grades in all those areas, and then you come up with an OFP, which is the future projection of the player. And so a grade is awarded that player based on the evaluation of those 5 tools. And then it correlates to where the player should go, what round, how much money, and certainly, how those tools profile at that particular position. And so with the Braves at the time, for example, a shortstop, the most important tools for the shortstop position during that period of time was run, field, and throw. Now the game has evolved where offense is a big part of that. And so you would take those 3 tools if you were turning in a shortstop, and you would weight them a little bit differently. So I learned how to evaluate players in a more thorough process other than just saying that guy can play, and you had to really learn to explain it. But it helped me greatly because as somebody who wanted to coach and spent their entire life kind of learning the makeup of a player and what a player is about, what the DNA of a player is, and how hard they work, and the repetitions that it takes to be a player, how difficult this game is to have success in, and just all the perseverance and the commitment required to be a player. I mean, that really helped me because at the end of the day, you can grade out tools, but if you don't have a commitment to play and a desire to win and just kind of a relentless focus on developing the fundamentals of the game, you're never going to be an impact major league player. You can have all the tools and all the athletic ability in the world, but if you don't have a commitment in those areas I mentioned, you're not going to reach your ceiling and your potential as a player. So the coaching side of it, I felt like really gave me an edge. And of course, at the time, Danny, we ran a lot of tryout camps, okay? And so I would run probably 20 to 25 tryout camps a year in my territory, open tryouts where I'd invite kids from all over that area, ages 16 to 25, and we'd have literally 100 to 200 kids show up, and you'd have to organize the camp, and you'd have to have a way to evaluate them in a timely fashion. And then, of course, I'd have a lot of individual workouts with players, and the fact that I knew my way around the field and being able to hit fungos and throw batting practice and hit pop-ups and do some of that, I was able to, it helped me with the evaluation process. And plus it gave you a connection with the player, right? I mean, if they knew that you could put the uniform on and get on the field with them, it opened up doors and because that's their office, right? That's where the player's most comfortable. And you can meet with them in a hotel room, or you can meet with them in their home, and it's a little sterile. They're on guard a little bit, but when you're talking to them around the batting cage or in the dugout, they're a little more open, a little less guarded, and you can get to know them a lot better. So I felt like it really, really helped me to have that coaching background. And plus I had relationships with a lot of high school coaches and college coaches because of my experience as a coach.
You obviously are a great family man, and your son now is getting into baseball. Give me a little background on how you met your wife. Well,
you mentioned I went to high school in the Quad Cities, Moline, Illinois. When I went off to Garden City Community College, my father, again, who I mentioned, bounced around a little bit as he bettered our lives in aviation. He took a job with a company called Air Speciale, which is an airline manufacturer similar to Boeing. In fact, they make the Airbus, which you're probably familiar with that aircraft. So Dad went to work there and moved in across the street from Mary Ann's family. And so a couple of years later, being home, and I wasn't home a lot. Once I was 18 and I went off to school, I was gone. And then in the summers, I was playing baseball all over and different summer leagues. But I happened to be home the summer, I forget which year it was probably the summer of maybe, I don't know, maybe 88 or 89. I played in the Clark Griffith Collegiate League, which is a league that's no longer in existence. Clark Griffith, the old owner of the Washington Senators, started the league many, many years ago, and it was a well-known collegiate league out east. I played in that league, and I stayed at home that summer, and that's when I met Mary Ann. And so we began dating, although it was more of a long-distance relationship, Danny, over the next 4 to 5 years, because I was away and coaching and traveling and so forth. And then we got married in 1992, actually September 5th of 1992.
Who would you say was the person who had the most attraction to the other one first?
Well, that would probably be me. When I noticed her, and it's kind of funny. I'd noticed that she'd walk her dog every day about the same time, and I decided that I would go on a run at that time. I know you're a big runner, and I'm not as dedicated as you are, but I took it an opportunity to go for a run. I kept my shirt on, though. Okay, so
very good. I like that
for obvious reasons. But so I just made it convenient. You know how that goes. And actually, I was kind of shy with girls. I was never real forceful with girls. And then we started talking one day, and then I remember calling her and asking her if she wanted to go get ice cream, and we actually went to Denny's and had ice cream for the first time, and that was our first date. So
there you go. Did she? I mean, obviously, it became apparent how much of a love for baseball you had. How difficult do you think it was for her to maybe make the commitment to a person who was going to be so dedicated to his craft?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, she had 3 older brothers, and Mary Ann, there's an 8-year difference between her and the youngest brother, Stephen. And so Mary Ann was had a little later in life, but she had 3 brothers, and they all played sports, and they all played baseball. And her father grew up in right outside of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in western PA, in a little town called South Fork. And you know how crazy the fans are in western PA about football and basketball and baseball, and so. But her dad was an avid Pirate fan, and so she was certainly familiar with sports, and she played some softball growing up as a young girl, and so she knew of the game, and it's funny, before when we became pretty serious about dating, I told her, I said, look, are you sure you want to make this commitment into marriage? I hadn't asked Mary Ann to marry me yet, but we had talked about it. Right. And I said, and I told her, I said, look, because I'm going to be a college coach. That means I'm not going to make any money. I'm probably going to get fired a couple times. We're going to have to move around a little bit. I mean, it's got to be something that you really want to do and understand. And she was very, and to this day, she's a great encourager and great support system, very emotionally stable. I mean, Dan, even through all the trials that we've had here, the ups and downs, I mean, you wouldn't know whether we won a game or lost the game each and every day throughout the season. She's very stable with regard to the emotions of this game. And in fact, when I was coaching at George Mason, Ray Tanner, who was the coach at NC State, had offered me a position to go to NC State to be the restricted earnings coach, and I think the job paid $15,000 a year. It was going to require us to move, obviously, to the Raleigh area. We were prepared to do it. Mary Ann was the breadwinner of the family. We were actually on her insurance at the time, but it was a great opportunity for me to go to NC State and be in the ACC, and it would have been a really good position. And so I was going to take that job, and I agreed to that job, and she was willing to go uproot to give up her job, and she was working for a company called Spot Image, another French-owned company. In fact, they sold satellite imagery, and she's a sales rep there, and had a lot of responsibility and was doing very well, and her career was moving in the right direction. But she was willing to forego any opportunity she had, and go to Raleigh, and certainly the economy of the both of us at that time was drastically going to be reduced because of just one salary and again, her being the breadwinner and giving up on her career. But she was willing to do that. Long story short, didn't happen. Ray Tanner ended up leaving, and Billy Brown, who was the head coach at George Mason, didn't want to lose us, and they were able to come up with a little bit more money to keep us there in George Mason. So we stayed in Fairfax, Virginia for a few more years.
Obviously, the Braves had tremendous success while you were there, and you're climbing the ladder through that, but maybe there was a little bit of a ceiling there. When did you get to the point where you thought you might have to go elsewhere in order to be a general manager?
Danny, I never wanted to go anywhere else. I never wanted to be a general manager. The first opportunities that we had to interview, I didn't even go on the interviews. The only reason I interviewed in Boston is because John Sherholtz basically made me. He said, "Look, we're at the GM meetings here," and he said Larry Lucchino, who was the president of the Red Sox at the time, and Tom Warner, who was part of the ownership group. He said, "They're there at this hotel. You just need to meet with them. Just go through the process." And so I did, and it got a little serious, and it got to a point where they called the house one day and they said, "Look, we want you and Mary Ann to come to Boston, and we want to talk to you about you being the general manager with the Boston Red Sox." And they were prepared to make us an offer. And I called John, and John said, "Look, this has gone far enough." He said, "Let's meet tomorrow morning at Turner Field. Meet me at 7:30, and we'll talk about this." And sure enough, I did. And John said, "Look, you're part of the succession plan here. I don't want you to go anywhere. I want you to stay and be a part of what we're doing here." And I said, "John, that's great. I'm not even sure I want to be a GM, truthfully. I love scouting. I love player development. I enjoy the connection of the players. And, I love who I work with. I love this city. I love this team. I feel like our family is thriving here, although they were all very young. Ashley, Avery, and Robert were still very young. I think Robert was 3 at the time, and Avery would have been 7, and Ashley would have been 10, or I may have that off by a year. Maybe they were 9, 6, and 3. I can't remember. But they were young, and so we decided to call that off. And then later that year, let's see, I want to say it was in May of 2005 or 2006, rather.
Right.
John called. Well, actually, step up. And so February of that year, 2006, January or February, John called me one night and he said, "I got a call from the Cincinnati Reds. They want to interview for their position. They had a vacancy mid-year." And I said, "John, I'm just not interested. I'm just going to." He said, "Well, that's what I thought you'd say, but I just want to make you aware of it." And then in May of 2006, he asked me to go to lunch to the CNN Center, which wasn't uncommon. We had lunch probably twice a week. And so it was just him and I. And he said, "Look," he said, "David Glass, the owner of the Kansas City Royals, would like to fly here to Atlanta and meet with you about their general manager position." And I said, well, John, I didn't know their general manager position was open because they hadn't made a change at that point in time. He said, "Well, I don't know what they're going to do." He said he just wants to meet with you and talk to you about baseball and get your ideas and thoughts and so forth. And so I met Dan and Dave Glass at Peachtree DeKalb Airport, right just north of Turner Field, and we talked about the Royals and the position, and then they offered it a few days later, and so anyway, but it was never really on the radar, and I actually told John that I wasn't going to go to Kansas City, and we're going to stay right here in Atlanta. Again, he had talked to me about some things in the future, and I don't know, Danny, even for whatever reason, after I said that, I mean, I had a little bit of relief. When I told Mary Ann, she had a sense of relief. But as the day went on, truthfully, I didn't have a peace about it. I start saying things in my mind. Well, what are we going to win? 28 in a row here. We'd already won 14. What John Sherholtz and Bobby Cox accomplished here is special. Will probably never be repeated. The Royals were your boyhood team. It would mean a lot to your family, even though some of those family members had already been deceased. I knew how passionate this fan base was. I didn't know if I was capable of doing well here, truthfully, because I never really evaluated myself as a general manager, and with John Sherholtz as your model, it's pretty hard to think that you can top that or even be capable of that, truthfully. But I realized in talking to people and getting counsel from people is I don't have to do it John Sherholtz's way. I can do it my way, and a scouting and player development, and I don't have to do it is the way John did it, and just be yourself. And so decided to take a crack at it. And I remember John told me, he said, once I took the job, he said, no doubt in my mind that you'll be able to build a really good farm system. You'll be able to do that. He said, but don't ever lose sight of the importance of winning major league games, because it's really important to the owner, it's important to the fans, and so forth. And I didn't really understand what he meant until about year 3, truthfully, because it is. You've got to win major league games. Certainly a certain amount. You've got to be competitive on the major league side, even though you may be doing great work in the minor leagues. And ultimately, as you know, Danny, that's what we have to do here. We've got to do it through scouting and player development. We've got to raise our own players. And knowing full well if they become stars, we probably won't be able to keep them. But we've got to raise a group of them, multiples, and they've got to hit at the right time, especially with the economics of the game right now. So, but it's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding to be able to work in baseball at this level. But again, I never really wanted to be a general manager.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that. And moving on in age, as we all are, what do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. They just contacted me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkskill.com. Look forward to hearing from you. You had been in an organization that did very little losing, and you had to go through a lot of losing before you had the great triumphs that you would have. How difficult? I'm sure you've answered this question a million times, but how difficult was it, and how much doubt was there along the way?
Well, that's a great question, and really, most people will tell you that I am extremely, extremely competitive, especially in meeting rooms, the suite, clubhouse. I mean, I'm extremely competitive. But I knew that we were in a process of building. We weren't really rebuilding because we hadn't won here in Kansas City since 1985. And so we were building, and I took a lot of enjoyment in that process, knowing that we were going to be good someday. And I tell our people all the time, let's not focus on outcomes. Let's just try to get better each and every day, and then someday we'll wake up and we'll probably be pretty good. But let's not be motivated strictly by the praise, so we're not defeated in the criticism. And so in praise and criticism in the major leagues is wins and losses, and that's evaluated every single day. So we just focused really intently on building our organization, put us in a situation to be good. And that's why, I made the statement that it became embarrassing after the fact, but at the time in 2013, after we had, I think, the best record of the second half of the American League, in 2013, I was asked a question about the season. I said, a part of me feels like we won the World Series, right? Which
Right.
I get why people would think that's a dumb thing to say. And on the surface it is when you don't even make the playoffs, but that's how I felt because I knew all the work we'd done and I knew we were going to win. You can't predict the World Series and winning a World Series, but I knew we were going to start winning baseball games, okay? But I will tell you this, the last 2 years of losing 100 games, that's really been bothersome to me because that's simply, and some of it's out of our control because we decided not to trade our players after 15, and we went for it in 16, and we went for it in 17. We shouldn't have lost 100 games, in my opinion, in either year, but we did, right? And that's my responsibility. The earlier years, it didn't bother me as much as it has the last 2 years, truthfully. But I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I know our organization is stronger today than it was in 2006. I know that our organization, that the intellectual capital and the power that we have in the front office right now with all of our people is at an all-time high. I mean, J.J. Piccolo has done an amazing job of just building out our farm system and hiring terrific people. Alex Zumwalt does an amazing job with what he does. Rene Francisco remains a force with what we do internationally. Lonnie Goldberg is becoming one of the best scouting directors in baseball. I mean, Scott Sharp is an amazing leader and organizes all aspects of what we do and helps bring synergy to all the departments. Gene Watson is a much better director of professional scouting today than he was before. Dr. Mack is amazing at what he does with analytics and our research and development, and Dr. Made, our behavioral science, and Matt Morosco, who does our leadership development. Austin Driggers, our director of performance science. I mean, these are all departments that we've built out over the last 2 to 3 years. So I know we're in a much better position going forward into the future and to be able to have sustained success, Danny, than we've ever been before. So I take great pride in that. Truthfully, it's not a whole lot that I've done. I have to give credit to all those people that I've mentioned, but I've learned to kind of stay out of the way and just continue to focus on the things that I do well. And I believe at this stage in my career, it's just providing support, encouragement, and wisdom, asking questions, validating judgment, making sure that we have harmony in the organization so all these departments are working together and functioning well. And so it's been very enjoyable. And then just through this process of ownership change, I've enjoyed leading through that. It's had its challenges, but I can't tell you how thankful I am, first of all, that the Glass family, and especially Mr. Glass's reputation changed dramatically. I think people were able to see kind of the real David Glass over the last 5 or 6 years. That's very rewarding to me personally, because I always had deep affection for Mr. Glass. Very smart, very tough, very competitive. Somebody who was really a heavyweight in the industry amongst the other owners and in kind of leading through effective change in the growth of the industry. And then, of course, when he got sick and passed on, that's been, very sad for all of us to deal with. We miss him. But then also, to watch how he orchestrated that ownership change, with Mr. Sherman. And to be able to know Mr. Sherman has just been an absolute joy. I mean, with what we're going through right now, with this pandemic and kind of this stoppage in the industry and some of the economic challenges, John Sherman is going to be an incredible owner. I mean, an incredible owner. He's exactly what baseball needs. This entire ownership group gives us a competitive advantage. I mean, to a level that I can't only imagine, because they all have Kansas City ties. They love the Royals. And John Sherman has been a terrific leader through all of this. Very thoughtful, very measured, asked great questions. And I've really enjoyed getting to know him in this way. And it's probably not something that I would have had the opportunity to do and learn about him if we wouldn't have this stoppage, this pandemic that we're dealing through, and so that we're dealing with. So it's all been good, but I've really enjoyed managing through this from a leadership standpoint.
And maybe there are not very many good fallouts from the pandemic, but one of them is that people need sports entertainment. And this 5 years down the road, the games are being played again when you won the World Series. How much have you been able to enjoy that and maybe enjoy it even more than you did when you were immersed in the midst of it?
I've been asked that question a couple times, and before this stoppage, I'd never seen any replay of any of the games. Now, of course, I've seen highlights and so forth, but I've never sat down and watched the game. And truthfully, I watched 2014. I have yet to see all of 2015. I've seen parts of the World Series. I guess 2014, they had the game the other night on MLB Network, Game 7. I couldn't watch it.
Right.
I could not watch the game, and I've yet to see that game. Again, I've seen highlights of it, but I was texting with Kevin McMullen, who's the assistant coach at University of Virginia. He's somebody that I've known for many, many years, back to my area scouting days. And Kevin was kind of just wondering what's going on with baseball, and he said, "I thought about you because on MLB Network, I'm watching the Game 7 between San Francisco and the Royals, and I was sitting with Marianne, and Marianne turned it on, and I said, I can't watch this, and and it just made my heart my gut just sink. So, but I watched some of it, and I realized just how much fun that team was, how the chemistry was strong, how they pulled for one another. They did whatever they had to do to win. You know, they'd get down bunts. They played extremely hard. The concentration level on defense was amazing, and they knew they were going to win the games. And I realized how special Brandon Finnegan was at that time to be able to do what he did, coming off of the draft and off the campus at TCU basically, and stepping into a playoff. He pitched some big innings for us, and I realized how special Yordano Ventura was. I mean, watching him pitch Game 2 against the Angels in Anaheim, the stuff that he was featuring that night was just unbelievable and as good as I've ever seen, truthfully.
You've been very generous with your time, and I know you've got all kinds of things going on. So I just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to talk about your faith. And when I was talking about the early portion of your life, was that a part of your life throughout, or how did that develop? And obviously, it's a huge aspect of your life to this day.
It is. I really didn't start getting serious about my faith until I was away at college, Danny. I mean, being on your own, having freedoms, and no authority figure really to be accountable to. I mean, I was probably living a life that wasn't probably going to lead to the best results. And I got invited to a Bible study by a teammate, and I grew up in and out of the faith, truthfully. I mean, my parents, we talked about God in the home. We'd be in Sunday school once in a while. I wouldn't say we were a real committed family spiritually at all. I mean, we would certainly be at church services on Easter and Christmas and important occasions. We would, pray at the dinner table. But for the most part, it wasn't really a strong commitment in our family. And again, so when I was away at school, Garden City, about the second semester, I just was invited to a Bible study and gave my life to Christ at that point in time, and it just gives me a lot of hope. I still deal with the same things I've always dealt with in my life, some of my flaws, I still try to control my tongue the best I can. I still get emotional at times, but I've always been transparent about that as well. I mean, we serve a God that gives us multiple chances. The one thing that, you just, regardless of what happens throughout the day, I'm just reminded to keep pursuing God. If I fail as a husband, admit it, ask for forgiveness, keep pursuing God. If I don't lead responsibly within the general manager position, within my profession, admit it, ask for forgiveness, keep pursuing God. I fail as a father, ask for forgiveness, keep pursuing God. I fail in the community, I say something that I wish I wouldn't have said, ask for forgiveness, keep pursuing God. I mean, so that's really kind of my faith walk. I've made more mistakes than a lot of people combined, and I don't deserve a lot of things because of some of the mistakes I made along the way, but I've just been really blessed and felt God's grace in my life. But I appreciate you asking the question, because it is important, and especially with what we're going through now as a country and as a community. And I've realized that that's why I'm not a real political person, and I've realized that it's more about people than it is politics. And I spoke to Pastor John Brooks this morning at Macedonia, and Inner City Church. He does wonderful work. It's a great community. I became close friends with him, and we talk about a lot of things that's going on in our inner cities and some of the individuals that are disadvantaged. And I guess we've all been disadvantaged at times in our lives, and we've had people come alongside of us and help us and so forth. But my faith keeps me grounded in that areas in those ways. And so, but again, I appreciate you bringing that up. But and like I said, especially with everything that we're dealing with right now, you've got to know that there's hope. That and I believe in that hope piece.
You're still a very young man. You're only 53 years old, and you talked about the fact that you maybe shocked some people by saying that you still had aspirations to coach. What do you feel like the next 15 years or so for Dayton Moore perhaps bring?
Well, I'll do whatever Mr. Sherman wants me to do. Every decision that we make is what's best for the Kansas City Royals and our employees and our fans and the good of the game, especially as it relates here to Kansas City. I want to continue to do whatever he wants me to do, and just do whatever we can to enrich the lives of especially the young people in our community through the game of baseball, through the game of softball. I mean, I don't have these great plans of I want to be able to accomplish this or that. I mean, Danny, it's simply try to do the best you can each and every day. And I know that's probably a milk and cookie answer and what you're supposed to say, but it's truly what I believe and how I'm wired. But I do want to continue to get more involved with the youth of our community, and we have the C10 leadership program that we do with our foundation, of the C in the Major Leagues Foundation, which is a very small foundation. I mean, I think right now we might have close to $60,000 in our fund, right, to give away and for programs. So it's a very small foundation, and I'm okay with that because I want to be very strategic. But what we've came along with alongside of 16 kids throughout the Kansas City community, mostly in disadvantaged areas. We've gotten them mentors. We meet weekly, and we're doing life with them. And I've seen unbelievable progress in these kids' lives, from a confidence level and a self-esteem. Just self-esteem has just went through the roof just because people believed in them and given them opportunity. And I want to continue that work. Matt Folks is our director. You know Matt.
Yep.
And then we have, like I said, Matt's a very humble guy, very trustworthy guy, very honest. And then our mentors are amazing, just people in our community that volunteer. And again, they meet weekly with these kids. We've got a curriculum that's in place. We're able to do service projects with them, take them to different parts of the community to see, how companies are being ran. Had a chance to take them to Lansing Correctional Facility this year before spring training, the 4 seniors, and tour the facility and meet with inmates and people obviously that are incarcerated and that have unbelievable stories in their lives, and we've been able to learn from them. And so those are things that I want to continue to do, but I want to make sure that we get the Kansas City Royals back to a highly competitive level before I even think about the next phase of what I want to do. I mean, I think you can accomplish both right now, but it's really important, Danny, that we get our team back to a highly competitive level. And we've got to be focused on that. As I said before, we have unbelievable leadership here with the people that I mentioned, and a competitive advantage with John Sherman and this ownership group. It's going to be a lot of fun, I can tell you that. And again, I can't say enough about what it's meant to watch this transition from David Glass to John Sherman, how they are just so equally yoked, and how they have great vision for the fans and the future of baseball in Kansas City. And whatever I can do to help in that process, I want to be able to do. And I want to be able to do it well.
And you have been gracious with your time, so one more for you. Obviously, you have goals, and you want to have the Royals return to being a relevant baseball team and winning a lot of games. But can you just reflect on the sense of the gift that the Royals and your organization, led by you, gave to the people of Kansas City in those 2 World Series years that, when they'd had years of darkness and the whole city had a smile on its face that just didn't go away for a long, long time?
Well, truthfully, after we won, and really I didn't really feel this until the parade, I just knew what this team meant to me as a boy. And I don't think you should ever stop looking at this game from the eyes of your youth. And I think if we focused on that as a leadership group within the industry, all 30 teams, plus New York, plus the Players Association, let's never stop looking at this game from the eyes of our youth. And so that's how I look at this game. When we won, I sensed that from many generations that showed up at our parade. But that's really the first time I began to understand, how special winning was. And of course, I got a glimpse of that with the Chiefs, right? Because when you're going through it in 14 and 15, I didn't enjoy it at all. In fact, I reached out to Brett Veach along the process, and I said, Brett, I'm not trying to insert myself into all your success. I mean, you guys have done an amazing job. I just feel like I need to tell you, try to enjoy it, because I didn't enjoy it, right? And so, but watching the fans celebrate at our parade and then watching to celebrate with the Chiefs gave me an idea of truly how meaningful sports is, winning is. Of course, when we won with the Braves, I was an area scouting supervisor, and I can't say that I was responsible for any of their success, truthfully. I was just happened to be a part of the organization during that period of time. I joined the Braves, as I said, in '94. We won in '95, and my fingerprints were nowhere to be found near that success of that team, right? So, but it's been enjoyable, and fans still like to come up and talk about how it united their families and brought their families together. And baseball is special in that sense. I mean, it carries on for a long period of time. The World Series and the playoffs are in your community. You get a chance to experience, and maybe someday, football, we'll get a dome stadium here, and maybe we'll be able to play a Super Bowl here. And hopefully the Chiefs are hosting. I mean, but that's the beauty of what sports does to a community, and that's what makes Kansas City so special, Dan. You know better than I. I mean, we've got unbelievable fans, very supportive, very local, very vocal in a very positive way. But they expect us to go out and give our best and to produce, and that's a good place to be.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.